Welcome to Decades of Heistery, where we cover safecrackers and bank heists from 1926 up until U.S. involvement in World War II. The 4 March episodes will demonstrate that the month enters like a lamb and leaves like a violent twister. Next week's episode will have follow-ups on old friends from Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Texas, and updates on both of our fledgling co-ed would-be bank robbers. Episode 3's Quick Hitters will introduce a remorseful embezzler from Indiana, a Secret Service officer turned robber, more Texas mayhem, and a robbery by a mummy. Our 4th video of the month will be our main story, and it will be a violent orgy of gunfire and escapes in North Dakota, of course, Oklahoma, and Arizona. But let's ease our way into March of 1927 by looking at the culture, conditions, and crime for a month that starts off with our most gentle of all robbers to date. For that, we turn to the Indianapolis Times, the March 19, 1927 edition, in its cutesy story titled, Robin Takes Key to Bank. We join the story with a Joseph A. Spaugh, that's S-P-A-U-G-H, president of the Citizens National Bank in Hope, Indiana. He closed the bank and walked to the home of Henry Simmons, who was the janitor. Spaugh noted that Simmons was in the yard doing some yard work, so he left the key on a fence post and then yelled over to Simmons to let him know the key was there so he could presumably grab the key and then at his convenience go clean the bank. Well, Simmons started to mosey on over to get the key, but then, like that, it happened. Suddenly and without warning, a robin swooped down and beat Simmons to the key, grabbed the string to which it was attached. What did the would-be robber Robin do? It flew up and landed on the telephone wire. Naturally, a crowd gathered because they noticed both Spaugh and Simmons staring up and shouting at the bird. The good and kindly citizens of Hope, Indiana, then lit the bird up with sticks and stones. Then the robin, taking the high road, dropped the key and hopefully, there was no information, but hopefully escaped with no injuries, but also no money from the bank either. Therefore, we have a robbery foiled. This period, the Roaring Twenties, is a real crossroads. It's 100 years ago. It's utterly modern, and at the same time, it's archaic, and to us, seemingly quaint. Would a bank president today walk to the house of the bank janitor and drop off a key? We see advertising, for example, and products themselves that seem old-fashioned. We have diamond rings for $8.95. And since that was a lot of money and credit was readily available, you could actually pay 25 cents down and then 50 cents per week to purchase a diamond ring. A focus at this time was on modernity and progress. We see a modern woman smoking, and we even see the use of the word modern in the text. Daredevils had taken the automobile and, of course, sought greater speed. Technology always demands greater speed, as we well know today, right, with computers and cell phones. Beneath the veneer of the daring do and civilization's march forward, though, were what we've pointed out in previous episodes throughout 1926, portentous signs that the economic aspect of the civilization was faltering. The Brownsville Herald's March 26, 1927 front page was loaded with its typical crazy stories. But way at the bottom of column 3, no bold title, no dynamic callouts, was a story plainly titled Call for Statement. And actually, story is too strong a word since it was only one sentence. It read, quote, "The comptroller of the currency today issued a call for the condition of all national banks at the close of business on Wednesday, March 23rd. Not sure if that was asking for a year hence or if the dates were wrong since this is the March 26th edition. But we've already covered a lot of bank closings from 1926 and up until February of 1927. Indeed, a weak foundation existed, and the comptroller was doing a checkup on the nation's banks. Further signs of weakening might have been the fact that advertising, while blending modern and progressive, was also working in economical and value. And as modern and sophisticated as the Roaring Twenties were or seemed, that 100 years or so ago is also worlds apart. We see the notion of saving money for retirement, or at least being involved in the planning of one's future, was a burgeoning idea for everyday people. Politicians were doing what they do, which is passing legislation. We once again meet up with Indiana State Representative Salwasser, who had submitted legislation on bank robbery at least once before. His bill, HB 19, passed on the March 1927 calendar. It defined the crime of bank robbery and fixed the penalty at life imprisonment or a determinate sentence of not less than 10 years based on the judge. And it passed 37-4. Well, that's nice and that's very relevant, but 2 columns away was SB 188, submitted by Indiana State Senator Holmes. It passed by a vote of 78-8 and provided for the, quote, sterilization of mental defectives upon court order, end quote. Now, that was considered modern thought, and keep in mind that we're only 50 or 60 years or so removed from Darwin and his concepts on evolution, and also had relatively recently dealt with the Scopes monkey trial. So these ideas were quite relevant then. Well, we return to the Redwood Gazette out of Minnesota, and something of an editorial titled Country in Need of Crime Protection. The focus was on Minnesota, naturally, and posed the issue of crime fighting in cities versus rural areas. The former, the cities, they concluded, were prepared and in a way built to stop crime, that the latter, the rural areas, were not. They referenced New York's Baum's Law, that's BAUMES, which we've addressed in earlier episodes, and showed its effect on crime with breakdowns of crimes, including robberies of cigar stores, jewelry stores, restaurants, and cars. They even included theft of furs and silks, along with some of the more violent crimes. Well, Judge J.F.D. Meehan, Meighan, a man who, in addition to that difficult surname, possessed 3 given names, suggested that citizens push their representatives for similar legislation aimed at any crime utilizing a dangerous weapon. They were trying to apply a Baum's Law type of law in Minnesota on any crime utilizing a dangerous weapon. It's a shame that there wasn't a masked crime fighter to put a stop to crime. But wait, what's this? It seems that the 1926 film The Bat was secretly being adapted for the live stage, at least in California it was, according to the Smyrna Times, which we turn to for the first time in the Decades of History journey. The Bat was a silent film about a mysterious figure dressed as a bat who, instead of fighting crime, attempts to steal emeralds from a hidden room in a mansion. There are all sorts of twists and turns, and it definitely inspired Bob Kane, the creator of Batman. And I may leave a link below for a YouTube of the movie The Bat. So we've had a robin, a man as a bat, and now we have a dog that enters the fray, all related to bank robbery. The Indianapolis Times March 23, 1927 edition brought us a story titled Alley Dog Entered for Show, and it is subtitled Boy 14, owner of Steve, recalls heroes at bank robbery. It seems that the Chicago Kennel Club's 26th annual show was potentially going to include the alley dog named Steve. Why? Because 14-year-old Frank Brown claimed the dog to be, quote, self-made, end quote, when he wrote show officials to see if he could enter Steve. For the pedigree, Frank entered born. Answer, don't know. Ownership. Answer, found by me in an alley in 1921 when he was homeless and hungry. Name. Answer, Steve. Parents, don't know. He added some accomplishments that may or may not have been fibs. For previous shows, he noted that Steve won a beauty prize back in 1922 and won a first special prize in an unnamed 1926 Kennel Club show. But for special qualifications, Steve, you see, was the hero who stopped two bank robbers who had attempted to rob the bank at Albany Park, Illinois. In fact, they'd actually successfully hauled off $700, but the dog chased one of the robbers and forced him to drop the loot. So will Steve make the show? Well, young Frank Brown added, quote, Steve is part wonderful dog, and this year I'll fix his cage swell, end quote, which apparently clinched the entry for the mutt, who ended up competing head-to-head with the more blue blood dogs. Now, unlike the nightly news, we will not end with a cute story about a clown or a dog. Instead, we return to jewel thief, wrongfully accused bank robber, and confirmed murderer Richard Reese Whitmore, or at least Whitmore's driver, since Whitmore, the Candy Kid, had already been hanged back in August of 1926 for bludgeoning to death Baltimore, Maryland prison guard Robert Holtman. The driver, Nathan Weinzimmer, was the alleged driver for Whitmore. He had been freed on $25,000 bond in New York, pending a habeas corpus hearing. Weinzimmer had been arrested on Monday, February 28th, for his possible connection to a $60,000 jewelry heist. He filed the habeas corpus suit and got out with the $25,000 bail. Then, on the evening of March 5th, he was arrested yet again, this time for a possible connection to a $117,000 jewelry robbery. Not to be deterred, he filed another suit and was out on yet another $25,000 bond. That's how we'll end our look at the culture, conditions, and crime in March of 1927. Next week, we haul in 5 robbers for the Rochester, Minnesota robbery. We get more information on both co-ed college crooks. We join Matt Kimes for yet another shooting and much more. For now, I want to thank you for spending your time with Decades of History. Till next time.
Where somebody waits for me, sugar sweet, and so is she. Bye, bye, blackbird.